How you doing?
Okay, you're live.
Okay, Chairman, you're good to go.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I called the meeting of the Village of Buchanan Planning Board meeting to order. Today is 20 May 2020. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of
the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
Thank you. All right, everyone should have received the minutes from last meeting, which was April 15th. Is there any changes? No requested changes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Tracy, second by Eileen. So moved.
Who made the motion?
It was made by Tracy and second by Eileen.
Thank you.
So we're going to go into old business, which was the preliminary submission of the property of 3179 Albany Post Road. And to recap, we had a stop work order pending court date. There was steep slope disturbance, and then we were looking for the steep slope analysis. George, you want to touch bases on the disturbance?
Sure, Chairman.
George, before you start, I just want to make it for the record that I do not see the applicant online, even though they were invited. If they come into the attendee side, I'll move them over. But right now, the lawyer, the applicant, or his representative are not online right now, just to let everybody know.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, George. Sorry about that.
So we were out at the site, I believe on Tuesday of this week, to look at the condition of the site and to see if it was stable. And we determined that they have put mulch down throughout the site, but as mentioned earlier, we have not received any type of analysis on steep slopes.
Okay, do we have, Peter and Brian, do you have any comment as per the site as far as the steep slope? You're muted.
Peter, Brian, you're muted. Peter, Brian, you're muted.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, the topographical survey that they submitted as part of their packages from December of 19 shows the slope an even pitch, as it were, with 2-foot increments as it goes up. They've been claiming that there was a walking trail which would have shown up on a topographical map as a flat surface, but it's not there. And then they've widened that walking trail to make it virtually a driveway. I believe that has to be returned back to its original condition. The idea of its necessity to get up to a shed on the upper property is that shed could be located on the lower property. We could just etch into the hill where they've already taken out major trees. So I don't see the necessity for a road or the shed at the top. But as far as the steep slopes, that road should not be there.
Just to let the board know also, David, the attorney, David White, is joining us right now. Somebody's joining us from the applicant. And also want to make Joe Rudiak, for those of you who don't know, he's the village prosecutor. So he can update you also what's happening in the court proceedings. And whatever happens tonight, he's going to take it back to court. I want to make sure that's on the record as well. But it looks like the applicant is joining us now.
Say that again, Marcus. I'm sorry.
That the applicant seems to be. Is that David?
Yeah.
David White? David,
White.
is that you?
Right.
Somebody's
Dave,
joining.
can you hear us?
Is that David or who's joining us now? The gentleman with the mask on your face.
Raúl Sarmiento.
That's right.
Okay, that's Raul. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody knew you're on the line as well.
Yeah, my lawyer called me to say you have to the meeting.
Okay, good. So, Chairman, so the prosecutor is on here too, and in case he has any questions or he can update you guys on what's happening in the court proceeding as well.
Okay, so basically we discussed about the deep slope disturbance with the mulch. And now does the village feel that that is stabilized with the mulch?
Is that addressed to me?
George, can I answer that?
George on the building inspector can address. Also, it looks like Tino Martin, representative for the applicant, is joining us now as well. But George, do you want to address the stability of the slope or the building inspectors?
I'd like to say that I agree with the building inspector's statement made a few minutes ago about the topography in the road. And yes, the site is stable.
Okay, so now we're going to discuss that you had a pending court date and what was the outcome of the court?
Well, the previous court date, I think, was back on April 27th, and basically the court is really waiting to see what the planning board does. We had a stop work order so that he could not do any more work on the property without the express permission of the building department and the planning board. The biggest thing we wanted was to have the property stabilized because, as you know, he cut trees down, he had soil disturbance, and the slope has not been addressed. The steep slope has not been addressed. So the main purpose of the court appearances was to get that property stabilized, which apparently, according to Mr. Palmer, now it is. But now no other work can go forward until he provides a steep slope analysis and then some means to either put the property back to the way it was or some other thing that the planning board would want him to do with respect to that. But I think it's the village position that he can't build up there, that the footpath that is a driveway has to go back to a footpath, and that as best as possible, that land goes back to the way it was.
Also, Chairman, maybe George can address. I think George has requested the steep slope analysis for at least a month or two. George, maybe you want to address it. Have you received anything as of tonight's date?
No, I haven't received anything, and I sent out an email to the applicant's attorney. I've copied, I believe, everybody on it. And you're correct. We mentioned it in our March 10th memo. It was the first two items, was the steep slopes. And then we mentioned it again in an April email. I believe April 9th. So that's where we left off. And we haven't received anything.
Does the applicant's lawyer know where the steep slope analysis is or what stage it's at?
Is the lawyer on? Is Mr. Martin on behalf of Mr. Sarmiento? Does Mr. Wright, the lawyer, know?
The JB is Jorge. He's the architect. He has contracted with an engineer to provide George Palmer with all the necessary material that he requested. At this moment, I don't believe they have finished any of that, but they did do that. They did contract a engineer to go forward with all that analysis.
Did they give you a time frame as to when?
No. That was just last week when we heard when he submitted the new plan. You got all the new plans from the architect, that's correct?
I haven't received anything, George.
I think George or the building inspector, Tino, the problem is that back in March, this Mark is speaking, there was a request for a steep slope analysis this March, and that has not been submitted. George or building inspector can address that as well. So it's been since March that we've been waiting for the steep slope analysis.
That's correct. We assume that the architect had someone already on board with that, and as of last week, they had not put someone on that. So Jorge JB hired a person to do that specifically. So you should be getting that within a reasonable amount of time.
Does any of the other board members have any questions? Okay, so with this property, we cannot proceed until we get the steep slope analysis. Is there another court date for them to attend?
Yes, thank you for asking. I was going to try to follow up with that. We are going to be in court next Tuesday night, the 25th, at which time I'm basically going to tell the court that they are still in violation because they have failed to provide or failed to alleviate any of the violations that they've been given, steep slope being, one of them. So they are still accruing penalties as we go forward because they haven't done anything. However,
we have stabilized the slope.
Yes, you have.
We have stabilized it. You can't characterize it as doing nothing. We did what you asked us to do was to stabilize the property, and we did do that.
That's
we
only
submit plans. Yes.
Who is speaking?
That's Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mr. Martin, before you logged on, we already discussed that that the village was on the property and that the wood chips were put down and the property was stabilized. So right now we're talking about the steep slope analysis, which we asked for back in March, I believe. Yes. And we still have not gotten it, so we cannot proceed with that. And then it's all going to be pending on your follow-up court dates and paying the fines and everything.
Okay. Today I called Marcus Serrano, and he told me that we weren't going to attend that 25th meeting. I just called this afternoon and I asked him.
No, the 25th is I thought you were talking about the village board meeting. There's a village board meeting on the 25th. I don't know you addressing the court. The court date is a totally different thing that I do not handle. So, is that the court date, Joe?
Yes, it is. And Mr. Wright, their attorney, knows of that, and I'm sure he will be there. I mean, he's still the attorney of record. He is still required to be there. So I anticipate him being there on the 25th at 6 p.m.
Okay, yeah, as long as I know for sure that that's the court date, because I spoke to Mark and he had told me that we didn't need to go there, but I understand the confusion between being a board meeting, a court date, and the town meeting. So, okay, so we'll make sure that David Wright is there and Raul Sarmiento is there, and also JB from the architectural firm and his engineer. We'll have hopefully a completion of that analysis.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Is there any further questions?
Just again, we can't proceed with anything, so it's kind of a moot point that we request anything. We submitted the new plans, and we'd like to have everything done at once. Instead, I was trying to submit some permits for a fence and for a demo of the portico and the repair to the structure, but the architect says we need to submit everything at once and get approval that way. So that's what he was in the process of. Yes.
Yes, the stop work order is still in effect, but for the village to proceed, we need the steep slope analysis, and then you have to follow up with your court date on the 25th and settle everything in there before we can either give any approval or any other inspections.
Okay, but the plans that were submitted by the architect are, I don't want to use the word acceptable, but they've covered everything that you requested. Is that correct?
We would have to review that after we get the steep slope analysis and the court date all complete, because we're not going to move further on to this subject until you give us what we asked for.
Okay, but just to, remind everyone, they had asked for changes to the front fascia with new windows. We did that. We changed the staircase We changed the elevation for a step-up side door and stairs in the rear. So all the things that the planning board had requested of us, we did do that with the new plan. So I hope that's acceptable to the zoning board, that we at least went through and did what they were requesting us to do, right? At further cost to Mr. Sarmiento and further time to get everything done. So that's why the analysis is delayed, because we're working on the plans of the building also. So
back in February, when the applicant to the planning board came out, that was part of the to the planning board section 4, the steep slope disturbance. So you knew that you had to do the analysis. So get that information to us, and then finish up with the court, and then we can proceed with the process.
Okay, no problem. We're
Thank
trying
you.
to oblige you as much as possible, and it's a miscommunication on sometimes. It's the COVID illness that Mr. Sarmiento had suffered last month. So there's a lot of different factors. So, we're trying to, the lack that we don't have a building inspector except for 2 days a week. So that kind of hampers our ability to go in and get somebody, some questions answered from us. Because we did a try on several occasions to get some, questions in person. Because as you see, our technology isn't working as well as we'd like it to be, and we're not really up on this technology. So, we ask your indulgence in that respect, that we're trying to get everything done that you asked us to do, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Tina, I just want to put on the record that we have full-time building inspectors now for some time. So if you have any questions, they're always available every day. Peter Cook is in the office every day of the week now. So just to make sure you understand
yes,
that.
And they've been very accommodating. I do call them, they do call me back, but I have gone on 3 separate occasions to speak to people, and no one was there, So it's not like we're not doing our due diligence to get this done properly, and we're trying to respond as best we can.
Well, the most important thing, as it was stated, nothing else could be looked at until the steep slope analysis is done. That's step number 1. So you can talk about everything else as much as you want right now, but nothing's going to happen until the steep slope analysis is provided to the planning board.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. That's exactly the right. That's exactly it.
Right. But the question is, a lot of the time, we didn't get anything from Mr. Palmer until later on, when they were asking me to respond to an email that we never even received. So that delayed us also. I'm just trying to say it's been very complicated, and it's very tiring on us also. We're trying to do our best, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you very much for coming.
All right, thank you very much. So I can hang up now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody on the board. I appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no more old business. We are going to move to new business, which is the preliminary submission for the pool and the deck on the property of 193 Catherine. Brian, do you want to give us an update on that property?
Jeff, I have a question first.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just one question. When they submit the steep slope analysis, are we then going to reply to David Wright's package that he sent with all the permits? Is that when we will go through that?
Once the village receives the steep slope analysis, George and Peter and Brian will review it, and then they'll come up with the plan of what has to be restored, and then we'll move forward with that process.
Okay.
As long as they're clear with the courts.
And
I got that part. I'm just asking the package from David Wright that came in, remediation permit, status of criminal, whatever it was. He had copies of different permits that were Claire Stoddard signed. I presume she was the owner of the property. The alleged gas spill, that will be discussed at that time after he gets rid of all the court and the steep slopes analysis presentation.
Well, I
We
think between George and Brian and Peter, they could review what information comes in, and then when we meet the next month, hopefully they'll have everything and we can proceed with it.
Okay, all right.
And Eileen, just George provided a list of, I don't know how many comments that they have to address as well.
Oh, I know. There were about 50.
Exactly. So we have to do that as well.
Okay, now, I just had a question. I just, he was saying that he'd like to do what Reggie Selleck had done and in one of his comments. So I didn't know if we were, able to say anything about that. Because what might have been and what is now is two different things.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else has a question as far as 3176 Albany Post Road? Okay. So
Chairman, just want to know, it looks, I believe we have one attendee about the yes application. He's the neighbor of 193 Catherine Street. So I don't know if you want me to allow them to speak now or later, whatever you like.
I would like to hear from Brian and Peter about the property before we open it up.
Okay, well, they submitted a plan which is different from the original plan that the permit was granted for the pool. They interrupted a retaining wall that was a stone retaining wall, and they cut through that, and they put in front of that for want of another term, mafia block wall. Apologize for the term, but nonetheless, they put that wall up. The neighbor was distressed at the fact that that appearance was facing his home. The plan that has now been submitted shows that there is going to be a second wall further down, closer to the neighbor, that's about 10 feet away, and that the block wall he's objecting to is going to be buried in soil, and the slope is going to go from the pool edge down to within, I'm going to say 10 or 15 feet from the other gentleman's property, with a fair slope there. But there'll be a short retaining wall, less than 3 feet at the bottom of it all. They're going to be drainage. They're supplying a Coltex system to take care of the water that's coming out, which has to be approved by Mr. Palmer. And that's basically it. They're going to extend the sides of the pool area to become a deck. I believe it's going to be a wooden structure, but I haven't got that positively yet. I only have an outline of it. But the existing block wall that's originally objected to is going to remain as is, where is, and will be totally buried in soil. So I don't know if that helps.
That helped a lot. Yes. Has any of the board been to the site or have any questions as far of the site?
I visited the site, but they were not home, but I could see the site from their entrance to their walkway. So I could see what the existing topography looked like.
So you did see the large concrete block, and then it went to natural stone. So that's one of the problem with using the large stone. It becomes an eyesore unless you're going to put decorative stone or covering on it. That's probably one of the main reasons that you get a complaint. Marcus, who was the person, neighbor that wanted to speak?
Mr. Burke.
Okay.
So do you want to hear from the applicant first, or do you want Mr. Burke to allow to bring Mr. Burke in?
I would like to hear Mr. Burke first and then the applicant.
Okay. Mr. Burke, you're on. You can unmute yourself and you can speak to the board.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, how are you folks?
And where do you live, sir?
191 Catherine Street.
Okay.
So my concern is not so much the concrete blocks. I understand they're unsightly, but that house was built in 2015. They raised the property 3 feet. You have the topography, and now I'm getting what? What's a new plan? I mean, am I going to be looking at from my driveway, looking up there now, I'm guessing it looks like I'm looking at about 10 feet of height. I don't understand why this whole property is now being filled in. I didn't buy this house with that topography, and I don't expect to have to live with topography that's that high.
So what is your concern with the filling in portion, that the blocks being covered in another wall being placed in front of it?
The topography is my concern.
Okay.
That was a transition property, right? When the Rouses owned the property, it was a transition property.
Well,
it went from the house.
Yeah, when the Rouses owned the house and the garage, there were 2 fires there, and the houses came down.
I'm well aware of that.
Yes, I was at the fires. So the whoever bought the land, they built the house, and it was approved by the zoning board and at that time the planning board.
No, I understand that. And you raised the property, well, between 3 to 4 feet at that time. Now you're taking the old retaining wall in the backyard and pushing it out towards my house again. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know where your house is exactly. Brian or Peter, can you address that?
And I'd love to present what we're proposing whenever that's appropriate. I have plans and topography and what the heights are. Happy to show that.
Does the gentleman who designed the new plan want to make or speak about this so we can get a clear understanding of heights about?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. James, if you can show the current topography and what you're recommending, that way everybody can see it at the same time.
Yep, and I have some pictures of the existing conditions. Let me share my screen. And can everyone see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So also Brian and Stephanie McNellis are here at 193. As we know, this was the existing condition of the property. This is the retaining wall, this rubble retaining wall. This is what we're proposing. This is the pool. And here I have some details. So this was the existing condition. This is the house. The grades go from about 115, 116 to 120. This is this rubble wall. And then there's stone under this. So the new steel pool was placed here. And we understand this project has gotten off the rails, I don't think intentionally, but we want to rectify it and get approval as quickly as we can. So the McNelsons can use the pool. So this stone wall right here was removed. And this is where the mafia blocks were placed. And then this is the new deck we're proposing around the pool with its code required fencing. This is the existing deck that's there, and we're proposing extending the deck forward. And then this will be a new large stone rubble wall that's not more than 3 feet tall to keep the grades from being too steep. This, I believe, is Mr. Burke's property here. It's his house, garage. So this is a section of the site. So this was the existing site. This was this 4 to 5 foot rubble wall. And then it went down here. This is the edge of the property about 15 feet from here. So what we're proposing is this is where the pool was placed. You can see that this was kind of the grade here. So there's a little bit of fill at the back. This is that steel pool. This is where those mafia blocks were, which are about 3.5 feet, 4 feet out of the ground. This is the existing grade. So this is the new boulder wall. And then we're filling this whole area so that the 4-foot fence that's required around the pool complies with the zoning. It's not more than 6 feet from grade. So this is the house. This is the pool. This is those offending blocks. We need to come up with a new name. This is a neighbor's house. So this is the view from the driveway. So basically, this is where the old stone wall was, right here. And you can see that it's sort of been pushed out. And we're proposing a 3-foot wall right here, very similar to this. And then this will all just be lawn with the pool sitting up here. And then this is looking back. So this will be the new deck around this, and this existing deck will extend with stairs down to this door. So that in a nutshell is, you know, what we're proposing. This is the property location. So any questions, happy to entertain. But the grade went from 120 to 115, and we're basically bringing it up, I think, to, I have this all calculated. I think it's 121 is the pool, top of the pool. So we're coming up about 12 inches from where the grade was. And then will all be green and landscaped, and want to maintain privacy for both families. So happy to entertain any questions.
Does any of the board members have any question? Mr. Coleman, on the blocks, is one level going to be removed, or is it always going to have the two?
Yeah, we're just burying it. So that's the top of the block right here. So we're filling right over them. So basically, they're becoming just a stabilizing of this. I mean, they're just fill at this point.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So the elevation has been increased with the block, and then the deck is going on top of that, and then a fence going on top of that?
Right. So this is the existing grade right here. This was the existing grade, this line. So this is where the concrete blocks were placed, which you can see right here.
Doesn't the fencing have to go from the original grade, 6 feet from the original grade?
My reading was it's from grade.
The pool barrier.
The pool barrier, right? That's what we're concerned about, and we didn't want to have to get a variance, so we're raising the grade. So this is not more than 6 feet.
Can you still hear me? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
All you're doing is raising grade. What, you know, when you raise the grade and you do your pool and you put your fence on top of that, what the top of the railing of that fence, what is the relation of that to my property?
So your property is here. This is where the wall was before. So this is about 6 feet above your property. And the code requires that the railing of the pool be 4 feet above the surface of the pool.
Okay. I'm Mr. Coleman.
Yeah.
When I stand in my driveway, you know, I'm 6'3". That mafia block wall, as we're calling it, is well over my head.
Well, I have these are the contours right here. So this is 110. Let's see, is that correct? Sorry, let me zoom in. So that's 110. If you're standing in your driveway, which is here, I believe.
Correct.
So that's 108, and it was 120 was the existing contour. So that's 12 feet. That's what was existing. And so
you're pushing it. How many feet are you pushing it towards my property? Is my question. You're going to be looking in the second story of my house.
Well, let's see. So the deck of the pool is at 121.1. So the deck of the pool is a foot above what the existing grade was. And then there's a 4-foot fence around the pool, which is a code requirement, you know, for safety of the pool.
You're speaking about existing grade on property you've already filled in, right? It wasn't filled in before.
No, so see this point right here, 120.8?
Yes.
Okay, so that was, I'll show you on the original plan. That hasn't changed. The pool is a foot above this sort of flat area and has a fence around it, as you can see in the section. So this is where the grade was. This is where the pool deck will be. roughly, it's roughly, 3 feet above the Mafia block, 4 feet above the Mafia block, and about 2 feet above where the grade was.
Yeah, Mr. Coleman, you're speaking about what was illegally filled in on that property, right? So,
I mean,
okay, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. Let's not get this.
This is the area of fill. This right here. This was the area that was filled right here. Actually, this line right here. So this is where the Mafia blocks are. But this grade is not above this grade here.
Regardless, you're pushing the higher grade towards my property.
That's correct. Yeah. So you can see it right here. This is where the wall was. This is where the wall will be.
Right. So when you push everything over and you put your railing up, how high is that railing above my driveway?
So that railing is, so right now, let's say this is 110 and you're at 108. This railing is 121 plus 4. This is 125. So it's 17 feet above your driveway.
17 feet.
But the original grade, if someone was just standing here, they were 12 feet above your driveway.
That's when it was pushed back how many feet, right? I mean, you understand you're encroaching towards me. You keep speaking about original grade.
Mr. Burke, I have some questions. As far as Brian or Peter, is the grade an issue with the village codes?
With the grade, no, what they have done is they have put in a surface water system with a Coltech system, so that any water that comes in that area and gets behind that wall has a place for it to be discharged to.
To be stored on site, correct, yeah.
Correct.
But as far as what the grade is now, what they're filling in, now it's raising up, is that gonna make a difference for the height of the fence?
It won't make a difference to the height of the fence because the fence will be level from the high point of the property, which is at the back of the pool from Mr. Burke's side. But is it gonna, I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
Because he's filling in and now they're backfilling and they're raising the level of the dirt. Now it's raising the level of the fence higher than what it was.
Pool fence. No, the pool fence is, it's sort of set. It's set at where the pool is, the pool deck, and it must be 48 inches above the pool deck. So it's not like there's a choice for the railing to go at a lower level or something like that. I mean, it could go down to the ground, but it still has to be 4 feet above the deck.
The issue is this is ledge right here. So this was as low as we could practically set the pool without blasting this ledge up. You can see it just sort of followed right here.
Okay, now I have a question for the footing towards Mr. Burke's property. Is that going to be, deep enough and stable enough to hold that portion of the fence and the deck?
We'll make sure. I'll actually, this is not the building permit. I'll talk to our engineer and see if, this has to be a pile or something. If this is fill, what the bearing capacity of this soil is. We can certainly provide that.
Helicoil, anything.
Does any of the board members have any other questions?
One question. So, Mr. Burke, your issue is really that the pool deck is closer to your yard. So basically the pool deck is closer to your yard. So they're like standing on an elevated area closer to your yard than what it was. Is that kind of correct?
Well, it's not, Ms. Bacher, it's not just the, again, this goes back to 2015 when they raised the property to 3 feet to begin with. Now, again, the entire thing's being filled in all over. And, this is not how I bought the house. If the village wants to allow this to happen, then it'll happen. But, it's a concern. You're burying people in this village. It happened down the road. It doesn't make any sense. There are alternatives.
Are there any other questions? So,
Is there any way that the pool deck could be on the larger section of the pool deck could be the other way?
That's an interesting suggestion.
Because then it wouldn't, you could still bury the mafia blocks, but it wouldn't be encroaching.
Let me see. That's an interesting suggestion. I don't know if Stephanie and Brian have a thought. So rather than the fence being out here, it would be closer, so there's still a path around this and more in the backyard. So we just basically slide this fence back to here.
Yeah. I don't know if that would help address, I don't know what it changes for the owners of the property, but I don't know if it would help address.
Yeah, it changes. I'll just speak. It does change the use of our yard. That's our flat land. That's, off of our deck where our children play. So we did want the deck on the other side for that reason. Also, we do have rock on that part of it, which is kind of why we positioned the pool where it is. We did some preliminary testing, basically putting rods down, and a lot of our yard is rock. So I don't know if that would be a concern as far as where the bearings for the deck could go on that side of the property.
Maybe that's something we should just discuss amongst ourselves too. And also I just want to understand what the approval process is going forward, because my understanding is that we do have a zoning and building code compliant proposal here. This is the required side yard setback. So we're well within setbacks, we're within lot coverage. And we could talk about what the impact of that would be if we push this back a little bit, just so it was.
Mr. Coleman, this is Marcus Serrano. If you were able to do that, would that also push back the retaining wall somewhat away from Mr. Burke's property?
Yeah, so it could a little bit. Yeah, everything could shift back just a little bit. Yeah.
May I speak again? I'm sorry. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this property was purchased with that old wall, that stone wall that cut the property in half from the rear towards the house where the new house was built. So now the owners are dissatisfied with their yard. So dirt's dumped. I've yet to see a permit. Blocks put in, filled, right? No permit. And now what? We're mitigating this to help this work that was not permanent done. I mean, I'm kind of confused by this whole process. That should have been tore out the second the stop work order was issued.
Mr. Burke, even though the work was started, there is a permit process, and that's why it's now to the planning board to ensure that they're following what the codes are for the village, and also to address any complaints, plus all the fill that was put into the yard. They should have receipts to it, and that should be turned in with their plan. So, but I agree with Jennifer that the pool decking should probably be forced more towards the center of the yard instead of towards the driveway, because you have that overhang and you have that backfilling, and which with the blocks there, that's going to create a stability issue, I believe. Does anyone else have a comment?
I have a comment. They could have put the entire pool up on the top ledge of the property.
Well, the pool would have been several feet out of the ground up here. I do believe there was a permit. I mean, it was a bit of a confused process, but the homeowners did think they were following the law. The building inspector came out, they talked about where it was going to be. The process got very fuzzy, and so no one was trying to do this without permits.
Hey, Mr. Coleman, does that pool fit up on the original property before doing all this?
Well, my understanding is this is all ledge, so the pool would be several feet out of the ground. So you can see the section.
This is an above ground pool.
Which
It's a semi in-ground pool. It's not an above ground pool.
Right.
An above ground pool fits.
Yes, it does, but they're choosing to use their yard differently. I mean, I understand your point, but I don't think they're not violating any code as it appears. And maybe, you know, Mr. Cook can just confirm that. I don't think they're violating any codes, but I understand what you are saying in the fact that it looks like your house, it's like it's encroaching onto your house. I have a respect for what you're saying, but is there a compromise? I guess that's kind of where we're trying to get to.
Hey, Mr. Coleman, the fence line towards Mr. Burke's side, can that be a solid fence and just have the openings on the rest of the fencing? So that way the privacy, so that they're not looking at him and he's not looking at them?
Yeah, Stephanie wanted a 6-foot fence here, which we couldn't do.
No, I just mean if you had a solid fence on one side,
Sure. Yeah, I think that
no one can see what is, but what is the distance on the back side of the deck, the narrow side?
This is about 4 feet, and I think this is 10.
So what would it be to put the 4 feet in the front and the 10 in the back?
I'm sorry, up here?
Correct. Rotating it around like Jennifer suggested.
Right. Well, I think that the issue is for Stephanie and Brian is that this is where the girls play right here.
So it's their whole yard. I mean, that takes up our whole yard then. Our deck would take up our whole yard.
I think one thing we certainly could, you know, this could be planted, this could be solid. I mean, this is not going to be mafia blocks. You know, this can be an attractive green slope. Just that's what Stephanie and Brian would want too. Was this all to look good back here.
Do Brian or Peter have any concern with any of this?
Well, the concern in my mind would be that if the deck goes out into the yard area over there, or the pool is raised because of that, it would be easier to look down into Mr. Burke's property below. I think you would be making the situation even greater by moving it backwards.
Right,
because it would end up being higher
up here.
Planting on that hill wouldn't be a bad idea. There could be the solid fence is an excellent idea, I think, and perhaps landscaping, something arborvitaes or something planted along that line.
Yeah, we'll certainly do that. Yes.
There could be a terrace in there with arborvitaes. That would certainly minimize the impact of visual overlooking one's property onto another. There are ways to mitigate that. And this is not violating any zoning as is.
So what is the next stage in this process as far as for the building inspector?
Approval. An approval for the plan as projected or as modified.
Yeah, Chairman, this would be an amended site plan approval process. So you have to go through your process to do an amended site plan, and then that's done. And of course, public hearing will have to be held. If I understand that correctly, Stephanie can address that, and you go through your process. That's what my understanding. Stephanie can address.
And what triggers the planning board review if this is a as of right proposal, just because it's gotten off the rails here? Or?
Well, you would have to change the fencing and then determine where you're going to put the plants and show that with the drainage, and that way that could get moved forward and approved to open public hearing.
Yeah, Mr. Coleman, because you're building a new retaining wall, the drainage has to be reviewed and approved as well. The public needs access to actually ask any questions as well.
Okay.
So that's the reason why, because you are
amending the site plan.
Correct. They're amending the original approval, and if it was just a pool, it would be one thing, but you're changing drainage, walls, landscaping, all that is part of the site plan.
So
Question?
we're eager to move forward, so we would resubmit for a formal planning, site plan approval, notify the neighbors, etc.
Correct. You would have to submit new plans for planning, the new fencing, and then we would open it up. You would send letters out to the public to set for the public hearing to get approval to move forward with this.
Okay, so I could follow up with Peter on that.
Well, the planning board would have to call for a public hearing if they wish, if they're ready for the next meeting. That's the first step. And Mr. Coleman, you should have also, the landscaping was an important aspect. So with any plan should include any landscaping as well as part of your drainage system and where the wall is going to be built and detail of the wall, so the engineer can review everything.
Right.
I have a question.
Yes.
You're talking about resubmitting this. Are you swinging the deck to the other side, or I got lost here? I'm sorry.
No, the deck would stay the same way, but the fencing would be a solid portion towards your property. And then they're talking about with the regrading and the drainage to put plants in there that would also create a privacy. So that way you wouldn't be looking at them and they wouldn't be looking at you. But don't forget, Mr. Burke, you're going to have a chance to come back after they revise all this at the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I think us, the Coleman, is going to look at the possibility of putting that wider area deck to the back. And that's at least a question that came from one of the other board members. And Mr. Coleman should address what the negative impact of that would be as an option. That's my understanding from Jennifer.
We could certainly discuss that, and then, I want to talk to Stephanie and Brian to make sure they're comfortable with what we're proposing, and we'll resubmit.
That's fair.
Are there any other questions for this site plan?
No, but I do agree with the planting in front of that, in front of the block, the big block.
Oh yeah, that would help with the stabilization of everything too, the root
right
system, so.
Yeah.
Yes, we're planning to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Coleman, you should also provide what the facade of the wall was going to look like. I know you said it's going to look like it. Samples of that wall should also be submitted as part of your plan.
Okay, yeah. So we'll be let's see. Sorry, we'll actually be using similar to this character. So rough rubble.
Lower wall. Yeah, for the lower wall. It'll match what was there. Right.
Big stones. But we'll provide some photographs or something on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's any questions, you could reach out to Brian or Peter Cook, and then they can guide you in the right way as far as your proposal of your new plans. And then we will meet back here next month.
So, Chairman, you have if the board wishes, you have to call for the public hearing for the next meeting.
Hold on.
Right, Stephanie? We're not ready yet.
We do when we're ready to, but if they're going to submit new plans, I think you ought to wait to see them before you call for a public hearing on them.
That's what I suggest too.
Okay.
So just to make sure, so the next meeting, they'll submit new plans first, and then wait another month to actually do a public hearing. I want to make sure Mr. Coleman understands that.
Is it possible to, email everyone plans, and because we're losing 2 months then, and if we could schedule the public hearing for the next meeting, we could certainly get plans to you in the next week and a half showing the landscaping and further details.
That's up to you, Chairman, and your board.
How does the board feel?
I'm okay with that.
And
I'm okay with that too.
I'm okay also.
Okay, so we would schedule a public hearing next month on the revised plans for the pool and the deck.
Jeff, is that contingent on us accepting those plans?
Well, that's what Mr. Coleman will have to work really with Brian and Peter to ensure that all avenues are looked at as far as either setting the deck the other way or making sure that the stability and the privacy is there in the finished product.
And then doesn't George have to review as well?
Exactly.
Correct.
Does that honestly give us enough time to call a public hearing?
It should.
Yeah, I have a question. How much time does the public get to view this? Because there are a lot of people who would like to look at this.
Well, it's pre-presented the next following meeting, but basically, if the public has concerns, like you brought your concerns here, then we would hear and address it from there.
Am I remember correctly, all plans, the submission have to be at least 10 days prior to the meeting. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. But in this case, in my opinion, they should be a lot sooner than that because you have to give then our consultants time to respond back by the public hearing. You'd have both sides comments.
Yep. So it depends how fast Mr. Coleman can turn them on the plans and give it to the consultants to review and also write it to the public for review.
Yep.
Right. Okay, I have two questions for George. I will call him tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Coleman, is going to be very important that you dot the I's, cover the T's, so that way we're all prepared for the mailing and for the review of the new plans.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Understood. Yeah, I assume there's a notification of neighbors by certified mail and notice in the paper. We can get all that done in timely fashion.
Okay, so then
I'll go over the timeline with Peter and Brian.
Okay.
Coleman, excuse me, Mr. Coleman, I will have the legal notice for the public hearing up to the village hall. You can ask Sharon.
Great.
Sometime tomorrow. I'll have it quickly.
Great.
And you'll get notice from Sharon about the notification requirements and who the neighbors are. She'll give you a list of addresses where you need to mail them.
Perfect.
Has to be certified, return receipt, and you come back to the meeting showing how many people signed off and received it, how many didn't. So
right.
that's
And then
the procedure.
And then I assume once we file the plans, they're kept. There's a copy for the public at the building department that they could access if they want.
If you could provide a digital copy, that would be helpful as well.
Sure.
And then we'll just meet on this on the next meeting, which will be June 24th.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Did somebody make a motion to call for a public hearing for the next meeting?
No, not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay.
I'll make a motion to call for a public hearing in the next meeting, June 25th, 24th.
Motion on by Elaine. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Is there any other questions concerning the next scheduling of this public hearing on June 24th? Okay, so I rule this one closed for now. Is there any other new business?
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
See you in a month.
Stephanie, do we have anything on the proposal for the Lewis Street property?
What? I don't understand. I don't know what you're asking. Sorry.
The wall on Lewis?
Calibro.
Oh,
Isn't he on Lewis?
Calibro. Yeah, I sent that along to you folks a few days ago. I received from counsel for Mr. Calabro their option that they chose. Did you receive those emails?
Yes, you said option one?
Correct.
So what does that mean that we have to go back out and respect, or who's going to be?
Two on that, right?
No, he has to immediately tell us what he's going to do, and he knows that.
Option 2.
So I've been in contact with the council. Council tells me it'll be in a week or two. And then we would forward that to the planning board to let you know how he proposes to undergo his option 1 choice.
Okay, Peter's saying option 2.
I believe he said option 2.
Yes, option 2 is what Mr. Brian Calabrio has presented to the building department.
Wait a minute.
Terracing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking off a row, pulling it back 10 feet, and then putting up a fence.
Let me see if I can find that now. I sent it to you, so.
Yeah.
I thought it said option 1.
I did too.
Did say option 1.
Yes, it
Is it
says
option
option
one?
1. Council wrote through, it is his intent to choose option 1. He will modify the existing wall in accordance with village code, terrace the area to comply with height and distance requirements for the wall and the proposed fence.
Okay, I think we need to verify this. This option 1 or option 2. Yeah.
Peter and Brian, you got a different notification?
I spoke with Mr. Calabro, and he had said he was going with option 2.
Which is, do you know offhand?
That was where he's removing 1 row of block and then coming back 10 feet or more, and then coming up with a fence.
Well, yeah, that's what this sort of describes that, only he calls it option 1. So I'll clarify.
Sorry. Okay, yeah. Well, I spoke to him personally, and he said option 2, and he wrote me a letter, and he explained it in print. So I can share that with anybody if they want to have it.
And I'll have his attorney correct that.
Just to make sure it's right.
Yep, just to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yep.
Are they going to inform you when they're going to start the work, or do you still have to look at plans?
No, it has to be approved by your board first before he can proceed.
So they're coming back with plans then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there any other questions for that property?
They're trying to do a different project in the front of the property. They want to put an addition on, but that's a secondary item. That's not part of the wall.
Okay. There's nothing else.
One correction.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, did you schedule this for June 24th?
Yeah, isn't that the
No, I think the third Thursday would be the 17th.
Oh, okay. 17th then. Sorry.
So maybe we can Marcus, can you let the folks that just got off Zoom know?
Yeah, Brian or Peter can do it. I can do it. So we'll take care of it. Brian.
Just because we would need, the plan sooner.
Yes, much
He
sooner.
doesn't get the extra week.
Brian, would you mind to give him a call tomorrow morning when you get in and let him know?
I'll give him a call and I'll have him submit the proper number of plans for board distribution.
Yeah, it's got a digital copy too. It'll help. And then we can put it on the website if somebody wants to look at it too.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a correction. The next meeting will be June 17th for a public hearing. And if there's no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Jennifer, second. Second by Tracy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you all.